Okay, so have you ever like looked at your fitness tracker and wondered just how in the world does this thing know how many steps I've taken?
It is pretty wild when you think about it, right? Like all this tech crammed into such a tiny package.
It really is. So today we're going to like dive into the world of one of these little technological marvels,
Yeah.
the BBC micro dot bit.
Yeah,
We've got a super cool knowledge organizer here to guide us through all things micro dot bit.
absolutely.
So by the end of this deep dive, you'll be like a total micro dot bit pro, at least when it comes to the basics.
Definitely.
So to kick things off, I just got to say, this thing is so tiny.
Yeah, you can literally hold it in the palm of your hand.
I know, it's crazy to think that something this small can be like a full-on computer.
It is a proper little computer, a programmable one at that.
Programmable. Okay, so that means we can actually tell it what to do.
Exactly. You give it instructions and it carries them out.
So it's not just like preloaded with a bunch of set functions.
Nope. You can really customize it to do all sorts of things.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, our knowledge organizer mentions a pedometer function, so you could program it to track your steps.
Oh, that's cool, like a DIY fitness tracker.
Exactly, and that's just scratching the surface.
So speaking of scratching the surface, this knowledge organizer also has like a diagram of all the micro dot bits parts.
It does.
And I'm seeing buttons and a display and something called an accelerometer.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
Where do we even start?
Well, let's start with the buttons, the ones labeled A and B.
Okay.
Those are your main way of interacting with the micro dot bit. You use them to like trigger instructions.
Ah, so like the go buttons.
Exactly, and then
Yeah.
there's the LED display, which is super cool.
Yeah, but is it just for like flashing lights or something?
Oh no, it's way more than that. It's a whole grid of LEDs that can display letters and numbers.
Oh, wow.
Even
Like-
scrolling text and simple images, it's how the micro dot bit communicates back to you.
So like a mini message board.
Exactly.
That's pretty neat. Okay, now what about these sensors? I'm seeing that word pop up in the guide.
Ah, the sensors. Those are what let the micro dot bit sense the world around it, interact with its environment.
Okay, so like how does that actually work?
Well, for example, it has an accelerometer, which can measure changes in acceleration.
Okay.
It's actually how your smartphone knows to rotate the screen when you turn it sideways.
Oh,
Same principle here.
so the micro dot bit can like sense its orientation.
Exactly. And the accelerometer is also key to the pedometer function we talked about.
Ah, because it can detect those tiny movements as you walk.
Precisely.
But okay, how do we actually tell the micro dot bit to like do all these things?
That's where the magic of coding comes in, but don't worry.
Oh no, I'm already lost.
It's not as complicated as it sounds, especially with the micro dot bit. They've made it really user-friendly.
Okay, good.
It uses a system of code blocks, which are essentially like digital building blocks for your instructions.
So instead of like writing out lines of code, you're more like piecing together a puzzle.
Exactly. It's very visual, very intuitive.
And our guide actually shows examples of these code blocks.
It has different categories like input music loops, each with its own set of actions.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. So it's like building with digital Legos.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So like with that pedometer example we talked about,
yeah.
would we use those code blocks to tell the micro dot bit how to use the accelerometer?
You'd essentially be telling it when the accelerometer detects movement that looks like a step count, add 1 to the step count,
Okay.
and then display that number on the LED screen.
Wait a second. Isn't that like an algorithm?
It is. You just programmed your first basic algorithm.
Because the guide defines an algorithm as like a set of steps to solve a problem or achieve a goal.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about the micro dot bit. It takes these kind of abstract computing concepts and makes them tangible.
It's like you can actually see the logic in action.
Precisely.
So beyond the pedometer, what other kind of cool things can you create with these code blocks?
Well, the guide mentions a couple of other examples. You could create a scoreboard, say for keeping track of a game, or you could create a program that uses variables.
Variables, what are those?
So a variable is like a container for information that can change. Think of it like a digital box where you can store a number,
Okay,
a piece of text, even a true or false value.
interesting.
And this lets your program remember information and use it later.
So it can like keep track of things as it goes.
Exactly.
That's really cool. It sounds like even though the micro dot bit is tiny, the things you can do with it are pretty complex.
Oh, absolutely. The possibilities are vast, especially when you start combining different code blocks and sensors.
And the guide even mentions something called an emulator,
Yes.
which lets you practice programming the micro dot bit on your computer, even if you don't have the actual device.
It does. It's a great way to get started with coding without needing any special hardware.
That's awesome. So to recap, we've got this tiny little computer that's surprisingly easy to program.
Right.
It uses sensors to interact with the world around it.
Yeah.
And there are tons of resources online for people who want to learn more.
It's a really fantastic tool for exploring the world of coding and electronics.
And it's really incredible to think about what you could do with this technology. What problems could you solve?
What could you create?
It's mind-blowing.
It is. If a device this small can do all that, just imagine the possibilities.
The possibilities are endless.
Absolutely endless.